Why the Federation? As I began to speak. You know, in history books, it's fantastic. By fantastic, I mean it's fascinating how European authors and some American authors have always given credit to men like Higgins and Walensky as if they were these trailblazers who wanted to unify a land into a political entity. They did not want to do that. The reason why the Federation in principle was created was because of the copper deposits of Zambia, of Central Africa, of Northern Rhodesia. That's why when you speak about the Federation, to Malawians, it may not have a great impact in their history books. To Zimbabweans, it may even be celebrated and even given ideals because it helped them to build their economies. Malawi and Zimbabwe benefited tremendously from the Federation. And I'm not shy and ashamed to make that statement, very strong statement. In Malawian and Zimbabwean textbooks, the Federation is dignified because it brought them some cash, some buildings, some infrastructure. But the Federation was anathema to one country, Northern Rhodesia, Zambia, because it was seen as the mine belt, the place where to come and dig. And Walensky and Higgins both had the dreams of making it the mainstay of three countries amalgamated into one. So the central economic motive behind the Federation has always been the abundant copper deposits in Northern Rhodesia, in Zambia. That is a very important observation. That tells you why Zambia's poverty and Zambia's struggles are structured the way they are. Now, the Federation, to achieve that, it adopted the South African style of apartheid government. This has not been talked about very well and very much in literature to deal with Zambia. Zambia had an apartheid system introduced by the British in the Federation. Just like they treated South Africans in South Africa, the leaders of the Federation mistreated the Zambians the same. Federation was an apartheid institution. Economy of Zambia was not a priority. It was the mistreatment. For example, in 1946, the population of black Africans in the territory that would constitute the Federation was 5 million people. And over 5 million people. And many of these people opposed whites who constituted only 104,000 people. You can see 104,000 going up against 5 million. And yet 104,000 people win. And became servants of this. In the Federation, there were over 2 million black Africans in Northern Rhodesia at that time alone. And there were only 72,000 Europeans in Northern Rhodesia. Towards the end of the Federation, the Africans started to protest white minority rule, apartheid white minority rule in Northern Rhodesia or in Zambia. What does that mean? What's the implication of that? Now, the apartheid movement in South Africa was the father, definitely, of the small apartheid movement in Northern Rhodesia. We see in the Federation that Malawi was the poorest of the three areas. Of course, Zambia would have been the poorest if it had no mineral wealth. The problem is that Malawi did not have mineral wealth. So it was a fully neglected territory. But Zambia should have at least some credit that it has minerals, therefore it must be given some priority, the way they gave the priority to Southern Rhodesia. Now, Africans started to protest. And how did Walensky handle the protest, or what they called disturbances? That's how the white people put it. They were not protests, they were disturbances, disturbing their peaceful economically prosperous life in the Federation. So, and then in England, the Tory Prime Minister then was Harold Macmillan. Macmillan was disturbed not because he had to be disturbed, it's because the opposition party in England started to demand an answer to the ruthless leadership of Welensky in the Federation. Macmillan constituted a commission. They called it the Moncton Commission. And this commission was to investigate whether what they are hearing about the mistreatments of the black people of the Federation in the Federation was real. Now, Macmillan, in the Moncton Commission, he came up from 9 recommendations. Among them, the Africans wanted self-rule. But rather than dismantle the federations, Macmillan was trying to reform it. So you can see, it's a tremendous point because it alludes to the fact that it was never in the British DNA to end that ruthless treatment. They just wanted to polish it and then send it back there. But the Africans refused the recommendations of the Moncton Commission. They wanted, at this time, they were very geared to become independent. So in 1964, particularly in December of 1960, it began in December of 1960, before 1964, the Federal Constitution Review Conference was held in England. Now remember, this is 4 years before Zambia's independence. Now, that Constitution Review Conference adopted Article 99. And this adoption was the Constitution of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. So they had to review whether this constitution that led to the creation of this federation was valid or was to be sustained. Of course, Kenneth Kaunda, Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe, Mainza Chona, and Harry Mwangankumbula attended that constitution review. So, Welensky back at home was afraid, and he had a legitimate reason to be afraid, because as Welensky feared, Macmillan favored that the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland create what would be called the Legislative Council, in which 16 should be Africans. 16 members should be Africans out of 30 candidates. And that only 14 should be Europeans. This was a game changer. But I'll build on it in the next segment. Thank you for now.